You won't get a single cent of this money. Not a thing, Rachel screamed, her voice so cold it made me tremble. We had just returned from my husband William's funeral, and my daughter had completely transformed. Her eyes flashed with a greed I had never seen before. $300 million are mine now, Mother, she went on, waving the will in my face. All of it is mine. And you? You don't matter here anymore. It had only been 12 hours since I buried the love of my life, yet my own daughter was throwing me out of the house. William and I had built together over 40 years of marriage. Rachel, please, I whispered, still in my black mourning clothes, my makeup streaked with tears. We just laid your father to rest. How can you be so cruel? Cruel. She gave a contemptuous laugh. Do you even know what cruel is? Cruel is you, living off Dad's money all those years. But those days are over. This house is mine, the money is mine, and you're on your own now. Attorney David Richardson, the man who had read the will that morning, cleared his throat from the corner of the room. He confirmed that William had left the entire estate to his only daughter. But in his eyes, I saw something unsaid. You have 24 hours to move out, Rachel declared, pacing the room like a victor. And don't bother me again. You're no longer my responsibility. 40 years you lived off Dad. Now you'll learn what real work is. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the fury burning in my chest. This was the child I had carried, taught to walk, soothed through nightmares. At least you read the entire will, didn't you? David muttered suddenly, his voice making Rachel freeze. What do you mean? My daughter snapped. But for the first time since she held that will, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. David looked at me, and in that instant, I knew what he was hinting at. The corner of my mouth lifted in a faint smile as I watched Rachel's face grow pale. No, nothing important, David said aloud, but the smirk on his lips said otherwise. You'll find out soon enough. Rachel stormed toward me. I don't care what that paper says. The money is mine, the house is mine, and you get out right now. She shoved me toward the door so hard I nearly fell. You know what? I don't want to see you at any funerals again. As far as I'm concerned, from today, you're dead. The slam of the door echoed through the house like a gunshot. I stood outside in the drizzle, looking at the home where I had been happy for 4 decades. The windows William and I had chosen, the garden we had planted all our memories now felt like ash. I walked slowly toward my car, each step heavy as stone. My black dress was soaked, but the cold rain was nothing compared to the ice in my heart. David ran after me, calling out, "Mrs. Nancy, please wait." He carried a folder under his arm. I need to speak with you. This is very important. I looked into his eyes and saw something that steadied me, calm, understanding the same look I had seen on William's face whenever he had a trump card. Is it what I think it is? I asked softly. He nodded gravely. Your husband was smarter than Rachel thinks. And you need to know the whole truth before it's too late. I stepped into the car with David. As it rolled away from the house, I glimpsed Rachel standing behind the living room window. Her expression was no longer triumphant but anxious, because she had no idea what I was about to discover. David drove me to his office in silence. All the way there, my mind spun between shock and a slow-burning anger like embers under ash. 40 years. 40 years of marriage to William, not just building a fortune, but a family. Sit down, Nancy, David said when we arrived. In his eyes was a mix of sympathy and a glimmer of hope. I sat in the leather chair across from his desk, the same place where William and I had signed our will years ago. The walls, covered in degrees and family photos, reminded me of everything I had just lost. Nancy, there's something Rachel doesn't know, he began, opening the folder. Your husband was a very careful man who understood his daughter's nature. I pulled out a tissue, wiping the tears that wouldn't stop. Mr. Richardson, please. I've lost my husband, and now my daughter. Don't give me false hope. Not false hope, Nancy. These are legal facts. He spread several documents across the desk. Do you remember 6 months ago when William insisted only the two of you come see me, without Rachel? I nodded. That day, William was very clear. Some matters were just for husband and wife. On that day, William created a codicil to the will, a special clause that only activates under certain circumstances. David pointed to a passage. If Rachel shows extreme cruelty toward you, especially during the mourning period, the entire estate will automatically revert to you. My heart stopped. What are you saying? I'm saying your husband knew exactly what his daughter was like and made sure to protect you. For the first time that day, $300 million. The house, the real estate, the investments, all of it will come back to you if we can prove Rachel met the clause's condition. My tears changed, not from pain, but from something I couldn't name. Relief, perhaps, or justice. So how do we prove it? I asked, my voice shaking. David took out his phone and showed me. On the screen, a recording app was running. I recorded the entire conversation this afternoon, every cruel word, every insult, every moment she pushed you out of the house where you had just kept vigil over your husband's casket. I covered my face and burst into tears, but this time they were tears of gratitude for William, my beloved husband still protecting me, even after he was gone. There's more. David Richardson, the family's attorney, continued. Your husband left very specific instructions. You must let Rachel believe she has full control for a while. Let her make mistakes so the whole world can see her true nature. Only then can we trigger the clause decisively. You mean I have to keep pretending I've been left with nothing? I asked. Exactly. David nodded. William understood your daughter better than anyone. He knew power would quickly corrupt her, and you would need time to decide whether you truly wanted to take everything back or give Rachel one last chance. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city of Boston kept moving as usual, unaware of the tragedy unfolding in my family. I thought of William, of how he was always 3 steps ahead in business. Clearly, he had been 3 steps ahead in protecting the family too. What do I do now? I asked, without turning around. Go to a small hotel. Act as if you truly lost everything. I'll keep track of Rachel's actions. And if she doesn't reveal her true nature? If she's actually changed? Maybe this is just grief talking? David stepped over and placed a fatherly hand on my shoulder. Nancy, with all due respect, you and I both know that won't happen. Today Rachel showed us who she really is. William knew it, which is why he prepared everything. I took the stack of documents and carefully slipped them into my bag. How much time do I have? The clause can be activated any time in the next 6 months, but William advised waiting at least 30 days to see the full scope of Rachel's behavior. We left the office after sunset. David drove me to a budget hotel downtown, a place I never thought I would set foot in, but now it would be my temporary refuge. One more thing, Nancy, he said before we parted. William left you a letter to be opened only when Rachel shows her true colors. He took a sealed envelope from his case. I think the time has come. I sat alone in the small, plain room, my hands trembling as I held the envelope. On it, William's familiar handwriting stood out clearly. To my beloved Nancy, the strongest woman I have ever known. I broke the seal, my hands shaking. William's script was unmistakable, the elegant hand I had admired for 40 years. I sat on the hotel bed under the yellow glow of the nightstand lamp and began to read the letter my husband had written for this very moment. My beloved Nancy, if you are reading this letter, it means Rachel has revealed her true face, and my plan is unfolding as expected. Forgive me for not telling you everything while I was alive, but I needed your reactions to be completely natural so she would believe she had won entirely. Tears streamed down my face as I continued reading. In recent years, I've watched our daughter grow increasingly greedy and cruel. Do you remember when she fired Carl, our loyal gardener of 20 years, just because he asked for a small raise? Or when she refused to help Angela, your cousin on your mother's side, after she lost her job? I also saw how she treated the household staff, how she looked down on anyone with less money than she had. I paused, staring out the window. William had indeed seen what I hadn't dared to admit for years. Our daughter had become someone we no longer recognized. But my love, there's one more thing you need to know. The $300 million in the official will isn't the full estate. There are additional accounts, properties in your name, and investments only you and I knew about. The true total of the estate is $450 million. My heart nearly stopped. William had been wiser than I ever imagined. Those extra accounts are at the National Bank of America, Main Branch, under your maiden name, Nancy Whitmore. The password is the day of our first kiss, May 15th, 1985. David holds all the necessary paperwork, but he'll only give them to you when you're truly ready to take control. I kept reading, every line showing the astonishing detail of William's planning. Your task now is to observe. Let Rachel believe she holds everything, and you'll see that absolute power will corrupt her absolutely. She'll spend, waste, and expose her true face to the world. When the time comes for you to step forward as the rightful heir, she will be forced to learn humility in the harshest way. But don't forget, the goal isn't punishment, it's redemption. Our daughter has lost her way, but there's still time for her to find her true heart. Only through loss will she learn to value what truly matters. The letter continued with detailed instructions. William had prepared everything. Trusted contacts to help me during the transition. A step-by-step plan to recover not only the estate, but also, he hoped, our daughter. I trust you to decide at the right time. You are the wisest and most compassionate woman I have ever known. I'm certain you will turn this tragedy into a chance for our family to grow. P.S. At the bank, you'll also find another surprise. Our old friend Thomas, the tech investor, has been quietly managing some investments not even included in the total estate. In truth, our wealth is far greater. I love you forever. William. I folded the letter and tucked it carefully with the legal documents. My mind began processing it all. William had not only secured me financially, but also created a chance to teach Rachel a lesson that might save her soul. I picked up the hotel phone and dialed David Richardson, the family lawyer. Nancy, are you all right? I've read the letter, I said briefly. Tomorrow I want to go to the bank. I need to understand the full picture before deciding my next steps. Of course, I'll pick you up at 9 a.m. And Nancy, your husband was an extraordinary man. What he did for you and your family is the deepest act of love I've ever witnessed in 30 years of practice. That night, I could hardly sleep, not from grief or fear, but from a strange anticipation. For the first time, William's death seemed to carry clear meaning. This wasn't just about reclaiming money. This was about reclaiming my daughter. At last, the bank manager finished her explanation. I leaned back in my chair, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what William had built, and above all, by the complexity of his plan to protect our family. And the accounts Rachel knows about? I asked. They do exist, and yes, there are $300 million exactly as in the official will, but they're bound by the clauses, Mr. David explained. If those clauses are triggered, that entire amount also reverts to you. We left the bank with a completely different perspective. I was no longer a helpless widow who had lost everything. I was a woman with the resources to shape this story by my own decisions. But first, I needed to see how far Rachel would go in her role as a millionaire heiress, for she had no idea that every move she made was being watched by someone far more powerful than she imagined. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a silent witness to my daughter's transformation. From the plain hotel room, with David's discreet help, I watched as Rachel revealed her true self to the world. The first sign came only 3 days after she drove me out of the house. David called with news that froze my blood. "Nancy, she's fired the entire household staff. All of them dismissed with just 1 extra week's pay. No explanation beyond. No longer needed." Clara wept as she called David, asking if she had done something wrong. That woman had prepared thousands of meals for our family, had cared for Rachel since childhood, like a second mother. Why would she do that? I asked, though I already sensed the answer. And sure enough, according to Clara, Rachel told them that people like her had no place in her new life, that she would hire higher-class staff, more fitting to her new financial status. I closed my eyes, a stabbing pain in my chest. William had been right. Money was exposing the true nature of our daughter, and it was not at all beautiful. But that was only the beginning. A week later, David showed me photographs taken by a private investigator William had hired. In them, Rachel was walking out of luxury stores in New York, her arms full of bags worth more than a year's salary of her former staff. She spent $150,000 in a single day, David said, handing me the receipts he had obtained legally. Clothes, jewelry, shoes, all things she didn't need, bought simply because she could. What hurt me most was the picture of Rachel laughing with her new friends, shallow women who had only drawn near after hearing about her inheritance. She wore a glittering gold dress worth more than Clara's car, raising a champagne glass poured from a bottle costing thousands of dollars. Yesterday, she went to the social club where you and your husband had been members for 20 years. She canceled the membership and demanded that your name be erased from every record. What? What? I gasped, as if punched in the stomach. She told the manager you had no value, that she didn't want your name tied to hers anywhere. I collapsed onto the hotel bed and wept not for a membership card, but for the cold calculation in every move. Rachel wasn't just reveling in her new wealth. She was deliberately erasing my existence from her life. That afternoon, I received an unexpected call. It was Charles, the former gardener Rachel had fired years ago simply for asking for a raise. "Mrs. Nancy, I'm sorry to trouble you at this time," he said gently, "but I need to tell you what happened yesterday." Charles explained he had gone to the house to offer condolences for William's passing, but Rachel's response left him stunned. She shouted, "People like you have no right to set foot in this house. Get out and never come back. Poor people have no place in my new life." His voice broke as he added, "Mrs. Nancy, I thought of you and Mr. William as family for 20 years. I cared for that garden as if it were my own, and she treated me like garbage." After hanging up, I sat in silence for hours. William had foreseen it. He had seen in Rachel a cruelty that power and money only magnified, turning her into a monster. The next day, David Richardson brought even more alarming news. "Nancy, Rachel is planning to sell assets," he said, spreading documents across the hotel coffee table. "The vacation home in Florida, where your family spent summers. The Manhattan apartment your husband bought for her when she went to college. Even the Dallas office where Mr. William built his life's work. Why would she want to sell everything?" I asked, though the answer was already forming in my mind. According to the broker, she wants immediate cash to invest in exciting projects. Clearly, some new friends have convinced her to join in schemes promising quick profits. In the days that followed, I silently watched Rachel systematically dismantle everything William and I had worked so hard to build. Not just material assets, but relationships, values, and the legacy of honor our family had upheld for decades. The final straw came exactly 3 weeks after I was cast out of my home. David called me at 6 a.m., something he only did in emergencies. "Nancy, you must come to my office right away. Rachel has just done something that changes everything." An hour later, I sat before his computer screen, frozen as I watched the surveillance footage from the Dallas Social Club. In it, Rachel appeared at a charity fundraiser, an event William and I had hosted every year for 10 years. This year, it had been continued in his memory, and everyone expected Rachel to make a symbolic donation to uphold the family tradition. Instead, before the entire crowd, she strutted in dressed like a queen and announced the cancellation of all our family's charitable commitments. "My father is dead," she said coldly. "And with him, those foolish charities end. Money has far wiser uses than wasting it on people who don't appreciate it." Shock and outrage spread across the faces of the crowd. They were people who had known and respected William for decades. People who had watched Rachel grow up, who had once trusted our family. "But there's more," David said, switching to another clip. This one had been recorded later, in the parking lot. In the second video, we saw Rachel confronted by Henry, a longtime friend of William's and the director of one of the charities our family had supported. "Rachel, your father would be ashamed," Henry said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "These donations helped hundreds of struggling families. How could you be so cruel?" Rachel's answer shattered my heart. "My father was just a sentimental fool. I'm smarter than he ever was. Money is meant to be enjoyed, not thrown away on losers who don't know how to work." "Nancy, I think it's time to activate the clauses in the will. My daughter had crossed every line, but I had another plan. William hadn't just left me the legal tools to take everything back. He had left me the wisdom to understand that this wasn't only about money. This was about saving our daughter's soul before it was too late." "Not yet, Mr. Richardson," I said, my voice filled with a resolve I hadn't felt in weeks. "First, I want her to face the consequences of her own actions." I didn't have to wait long. Karma found Rachel exactly 1 month after she threw me out, and from the most unlikely place. Her so-called new friends. David called me one morning with news that was both painful and bitterly satisfying. "Nancy, Rachel's new investment partners have disappeared," he said, his voice heavy. "They've taken $50 million. I sank into the hotel chair, struggling to process it. $50 million, a sixth of the fortune Rachel thought she controlled. "How did this happen?" I asked, though deep down I already knew. William used to say, "Swindlers can smell greed and naivety from miles away." According to the private investigators still tailing Rachel, she met this group of entrepreneurs at an exclusive New York party 3 weeks earlier. They promised to double her investment within 6 months through a European art import deal. David sent me the details. Fake names, shell bank accounts. It was nothing but a scam ring, targeting newly rich heirs like Rachel. "The worst part," David continued, "is that she signed the contracts without ever consulting me. She even bragged she didn't need a lawyer anymore because she trusted her business instincts." That afternoon, I received a call I never expected. It was Rachel. Her voice was different, small, trembling with fear. "Mom," she whispered. In that moment, her voice sounded exactly like the little girl who used to sob for me in the middle of childhood nightmares. "Hello, Rachel," I answered, calmly bracing myself for what was to come. I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" "Where do you want to meet?" I asked, noticing how she avoided saying home, our home. "Can you come back to the house, please?" 30 minutes later, I stood at the door of the house where I had spent 40 years of happiness with my husband, William. Rachel opened it immediately, as if she had been waiting. She looked a mess. Hair once so polished now tangled, makeup smeared, still wearing yesterday's blue dress. "Come in, please," she said, unable to meet my eyes. The house felt foreign. The furniture William and I had chosen together was gone, replaced by cold, modern pieces. Family photos had vanished, replaced with expensive but soulless abstract art. Even the scent of the house was different, as though the memories had been scrubbed from the air. "What happened, Rachel?" I asked, though the answer was obvious. She collapsed onto the new sofa and burst into tears. "I was scammed, Mom. I lost $50 million. The men I trusted disappeared with everything." I sat beside her, forcing myself to suppress the motherly instinct to hold her. This was the lesson William had foreseen, and I knew she had to absorb it. "So, what do you plan to do now?" I asked gently. I don't know," she sobbed. "The lawyer says it's nearly impossible to recover the money. They used fake identities and offshore accounts. Mr. Richardson refused to help when I begged him. Of course, David refused. He knew this was part of William's plan to force Rachel to face real consequences." "Rachel, why did you call me?" I asked plainly. She looked up, and for the first time in months, I saw a glimmer of humility in her eyes. "Because I realized I have no one left. All my friends vanished the moment they learned I lost the money, and I treated the people who truly loved me terribly, including you, especially you, Mom." Her tears poured harder. "What I did is unforgivable. I kicked you out right after Dad's funeral when you needed me most. I was too cruel, too horrible to you." This was the first time in years I'd heard her take responsibility for her actions. But I knew the lesson wasn't over. "So what do you expect me to do now?" I asked. I don't know. I know I don't deserve your help after what I've done. But could you stay? Could you help me find a way out of this mess?" I agreed to stay the night, but not in the master bedroom Rachel had claimed that as her own, erasing every trace of William. Instead, I slept in the living room, a reminder that my place in this house had changed. In the days that followed, I watched Rachel wrestle with the consequences of her own decisions. The remaining money was still a fortune, but the loss had shaken her. For the first time in her life, she understood that money wasn't endless, and bad choices carried real consequences. "Mom, do you think Dad would be disappointed in me?" she asked one night over a quiet dinner. The question tore at my heart, because I knew William had foreseen this exact moment. He had loved his daughter enough to let her make painful mistakes, if it meant she would learn important lessons. "Your father loved you very much, Rachel, but he also valued honesty, compassion, and responsibility. What do you think?" Rachel lowered her head, unable to answer. Then she whispered, "I think he would be very disappointed, not just because of the money I lost, but because of how I treated people, how I treated you, Mrs. Linda, Mr. Charles, and everyone who loved us for so many years." "So what do you plan to do to make it right?" I asked. "I don't know if I can. Some things can't be undone, can they?" That answer showed me she was finally beginning to understand the weight of her actions. But one more, greater lesson still awaited. 3 days later, the second crisis hit. David called early in the morning with news I knew would come sooner or later. "Nancy, the bank is requiring a full audit of all inheritance accounts. Someone reported suspicious transactions after the scam." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means they'll freeze all assets for at least 2 months during the Marne investigation." I hung up and went upstairs to tell Rachel. Her reaction told me everything, whether she had truly learned anything from her fall. She sat in silence for a long time, thoughtful. Then, to my surprise, her first words weren't panic or despair. "Maybe I deserve this," Rachel said calmly. "After everything I've done, after the way I've treated people, Maybe it's time I learn how to live like a normal person. That answer lit a spark of hope in me. But I knew the real test would come in the weeks ahead, when she had to face the consequences without the safety net of her fortune. The next 2 months became the most difficult trial of my daughter's life. With her accounts frozen and only a little cash left, Rachel was forced to confront a reality she had never known: financial limits. At first, she tried to maintain her lavish lifestyle with credit cards and by selling a few pieces of jewelry. But as bills piled up and payments came due, reality hit her like a cold slap. "Mom, I don't understand this," she said one morning, sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by stacks of bills. "The numbers don't make sense. The monthly costs of this house are higher than any normal salary." It was the first time in her life she had seen the true cost of maintaining a household. For years, William and I had taken care of everything, shielding her from financial responsibility, leaving her an adult who had no idea of the real value of anything. "How much do you think it costs to keep this house running each month?" I asked, curious if she had any idea. "I don't know. 5,000? She guessed. 22,000, I replied, showing her the bills: utilities, insurance, maintenance, the salaries of the new staff she'd hired after firing the loyal ones. Her face went pale. $22,000 a month, not counting food, gas, or personal expenses, just to keep the lights on and the house running. Only then did she truly grasp the seriousness of the situation. With no access to her main accounts and the crushing weight of expenses, she was about to run out of money. "What am I supposed to do?" she whispered. And for the first time since childhood, I saw real fear in her eyes. "You'd better start looking for a job," I said calmly. She gave a bitter, awkward laugh. "A job? Mom, I don't know how to do anything. I've never worked a single day in my life. Who would hire me?" That question was both painful and true. At 35, Rachel only had a college degree she'd never used, with absolutely no work experience. William and I once thought we were protecting her by giving her everything, but in reality, we had left her completely unprepared for real life. For the next week, I watched Rachel stumble through her first attempts at job hunting. They were disastrous and showed just how naive she was. She applied for management positions at well-known companies, thinking her name and education alone were enough. After her fifth failed interview, she said to me, "They told me I need experience. But how am I supposed to get experience if no one ever gives me a chance?" "Maybe you should start with something simpler," I suggested. "Jobs where you can learn as you go." Her pride resisted. But when the second electric bill went unpaid and the bank threatened to cut utilities, her perspective began to shift. Finally, after 3 weeks of searching, she landed a part-time job at a clothing store. Her pay, $200 a week, the same amount she used to blow in a single shopping spree. "This is humiliating, Mom," she complained after her first day. "The manager is 20 years younger than me and treats me like an idiot. And the customers, some of them are unbearably rude." "So how does it feel to work?" I asked, biting back the irony that she was now experiencing the very treatment she once dished out to others. "I'm exhausted," she sighed. "My feet hurt, my back hurts. I don't understand how people do this for decades." But then, something unexpected happened after her second week. Rachel began talking differently about the job, about the people she met there. "There's a woman named Danielle who works the morning shift," she told me one night. "She has 3 kids and takes care of her sick mother, working 2 jobs. She never complains, never shows up late, always smiles. I don't know how she does it." "Do you talk to her much?" I asked. "Yes. She said she's been working there 12 years, ever since her divorce when she had to raise her kids alone." Rachel paused, clearly reflecting on something deeply. "Mom, I've been whining about losing $50 million, but Danielle has probably never even seen $1,000 at once, and she's stronger than I'll ever be." It was the first time I heard Rachel express genuine admiration for someone without wealth or status. William would have been proud of that small step, the first real sign of empathy. The turning point came a month later, when Rachel witnessed something that completely changed her perspective. "Mom, something awful happened at work today," she said, her face stricken. "Danielle got a call from the hospital. Her youngest son was in an accident, and he needs surgery that costs $10,000. Insurance won't cover it all." "And then what?" I asked. She broke down completely. I've never seen someone so desperate. She said she had no money. Everything she saved went to her mother's medicine. She didn't know what to do. Rachel sat in silence for a long time. I could see the battle in her mind. Then finally, she whispered, "Mom, I have jewelry worth more than that surgery. In my closet, I have dresses more expensive than Danielle's yearly salary. And she has to choose between saving her son and keeping her family afloat. That diamond bracelet I bought last month for $5,000, I don't even like it. I can sell it and give the money to Danielle." That night, after Rachel went to sleep, I called David Richardson. "How's the plan going?" he asked. "Better than William could have hoped," I replied. "I think she's truly changing. For the first time in years, I see glimpses of the kind-hearted little girl she used to be." "Is it time to reveal the truth?" David asked. "Not yet. She still has to face one more trial. I need to know whether this change is lasting or just born out of desperation." The next day, Rachel actually sold the bracelet and gave the money to Danielle. When I saw the tears of gratitude on that working woman's face and the deep sense of fulfillment in my daughter's eyes, I knew we had reached a turning point. But fate had one final lesson for Rachel, a lesson even William hadn't foreseen. That week, a letter arrived that changed everything. It was from another lawyer, representing the estate of a distant uncle of William's who had recently passed away. "Miss Rachel," the letter read, "we regret to inform you that Mr. Thomas Miller passed away last month and named you as his sole heir. His estate is valued at approximately $75 million. Rachel dropped the letter, staring at me, wide-eyed. "Another $75 million, she whispered. "After everything I've been through, after everything I've learned, money shows up again." This was the ultimate test. What would Rachel do with a new fortune after experiencing loss and rediscovering compassion? The inheritance letter from Thomas was real, but there was one detail Rachel didn't know. I had veto power, under a family agreement William had set. Up years earlier, Thomas, his younger brother, had always deferred to William's judgment regarding family matters. I decided not to reveal that detail just yet. I wanted to see how Rachel would react to the prospect of gaining another vast fortune. Her first reaction was clear. "I can't believe it," she muttered, reading the letter for the 5th time. "Just when I thought I'd lost everything, just when I started learning to live differently, this shows up." "How do you feel?" I asked, watching her carefully. "Confused," she admitted. 2 months ago, this would have solved all my problems. I would have rushed to claim the money and gone straight back to my old life. But now I'm not sure I even want that anymore." She sat down on the sofa, gazing out at the garden Charles, our loyal gardener, had tended for so many years. "Mom, do you know what I realized while working at the store? I realized I can do things I never thought I could. I can work 8-hour shifts. I can solve problems. I can help people. And for the first time in my life, when someone says, 'Thank you,' I know I truly earned it." Her words filled my heart with a hope I hadn't felt in months. This was the Rachel William and I had once dreamed we might see again. But she didn't stop there. This $75 million could help so many people. It could help Danielle, Mrs., Linda, Mr., Charles, everyone I treated so badly when I thought money made me better than them. That evening, Rachel did something that stunned me. Instead of celebrating or planning how to claim the inheritance, she sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and began writing. "What are you doing?" I asked. "I'm making a list," she replied without looking up. "A list of everyone I've hurt, every mistake I've made, and how I can use this money to make amends." For 2 straight hours, I sat there and watched Rachel write down names, amounts, concrete plans. Danielle and her son were at the top, of course, followed by Mrs. Linda, Mr. Charles, the charities she had cut off, even co-workers at the store, people living on minimum wage. "Mom, can I ask you something?" she said, looking up after finishing. "Of course. Do you think Dad will forgive me for everything I've done?" That question ripped through me. I knew William had planned for this exact moment, the moment his daughter would rediscover herself through remorse and self-awareness. "Your father loved you unconditionally, Rachel. But more than forgiveness, he wanted you to find your way back to the person he always believed you could become." "Do you think I'm finding that path now?" she asked, her voice trembling. Before I could answer, the phone rang. It was David Richardson, the family lawyer, his voice urgent. "Nancy, I need to meet with you and Rachel immediately. There's an important matter regarding Thomas's inheritance." "What is it?" I asked. "I'll explain in person. Come to my office tomorrow morning." That night, I barely slept. I knew David wanted to discuss the veto power William had left me concerning his brother Thomas's estate. The time had come for me to make a decision that could change Rachel's future forever. The next morning, we went to David's office. Rachel wore her store uniform. She had to go to work right after the meeting. Seeing her dressed simply, in flat shoes instead of the luxury heels, reminded me of everything she had changed over the past months. "Please sit," David said, his face serious. "Rachel, there's something you need to know about your Uncle Thomas's inheritance." Rachel leaned forward, tense. "Your Uncle Thomas was a very wise man, and he knew exactly what had happened after your father's death. Before he passed, he set a special condition on this inheritance." "What condition?" Rachel asked, her voice betraying anxiety. David opened his briefcase and pulled out a document. "The inheritance can only be claimed if your mother, Mrs. Nancy, provides a written statement confirming that you have truly changed your character and are ready to manage such a large fortune responsibly." The room fell silent. Rachel turned to me, her eyes a mix of understanding, surprise, and even a touch of relief. "Mom, did you know about this already?" she asked softly. "I only found out last night when David called." I lied kindly. This wasn't the time to reveal that I had known from the beginning. "So, what do you think?" Her voice trembled. "Do you think I've changed enough to deserve this responsibility?" This was the question I had waited months to hear, the question that would decide not just her financial future, but the person Rachel would become. "Before I answer," I said, "I want to ask you something. If I decided you're not ready, that you would lose this inheritance forever, how would you feel?" Rachel stayed silent for a long time, then answered slowly. 2 months ago, I would have been desperate, begging, making promises, throwing a fit." She stopped and looked straight into my eyes. "But now I think I'd still be okay. I've learned I can live without millions of dollars. I can work, I can contribute, I can be useful even without a family fortune." If I said, without hesitation, she picked up the notebook she'd written in the night before. "First, I'd repair all the damage I've caused, compensate the people I've hurt, restore the donations I canceled, and make sure no one else suffers from my past selfishness. Then I'd use the money to create real opportunities, scholarships, job training programs, support for single mothers like Danielle. And what about your own life? Just enough to live comfortably, but not extravagantly. I don't need to prove my worth by what I buy or where I live anymore. She smiled softly, a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. Mom, these past months taught me that real wealth isn't in a bank account. It's in the relationships you build, the difference you make in others' lives, the ability to look in the mirror and respect the person you see. David and I exchanged a look. It was clear Rachel had passed the final test, but there was still one more revelation, something that would change everything she thought she knew about the past months. There's something else you need to know, something your father planned from the moment he started worrying about your character. She looked at me curiously, a flicker of apprehension in her eyes. David, please show her the real documents. David opened another, much thicker folder and spread the papers across the table. Rachel stared at them, not yet understanding what she was seeing. These are the papers of your father's real will, I said calmly. The will he wrote when he knew exactly how you'd react if you believed you had inherited everything. The real will? Rachel whispered, her face draining of color. Your father never left you $300 million, Rachel. Everything that's happened over these months, every experience you've had, was part of a meticulous plan to save you from yourself. The clause transferring the entire estate back to me if she was cruel, the existence of additional accounts under my control, and the fact that I had never lost my position as primary heir. I had always known what was going on. I just wanted her to learn. You mean? Her voice broke. I mean your father loved you so much that he was willing to let you believe you'd lost his love just to save you. And I was willing to let you throw me out of the house, endure your cruelty and contempt, because I knew it was the only way for you to discover who you truly wanted to become. Rachel burst into tears. Not the cry of someone who'd lost money, but the sob of someone who finally understood the depth of the love she'd been given. Dad knew I would become a monster, she wept, and yet he still found a way to save me. And you, Mom, you endured every poison I threw at you, even though you could have stopped at any time. Your father wrote in his letter, the goal wasn't punishment, but salvation, I said. I was willing to endure it all if it meant bringing you back. David handed us a box of tissues, patiently waiting for Rachel to calm down. So, what about the $50 million I lost? She asked between sobs. That part wasn't in the plan, David replied. Your father left those funds in accounts you could actually use, expecting you to make financial mistakes so you'd learn a valuable lesson. The scammers only sped up the process. And Uncle Thomas's inheritance is real too, I said. But as you now know, it depends on my approval. Uncle Thomas was part of your father's plan from the start. Rachel sat silent for a long time, absorbing everything. At last, she looked up at me, pained, grateful, almost stunned. Mom, can you forgive me? Not just for the past few months, but for years of selfishness, cruelty, and blindness to everything you and Dad did for me. I forgave you long ago, Rachel, from the very first day, because I knew the daughter I raised was still there, hidden under all that bitterness and greed. So, what now? The money, what will happen with the real estate? I took out a document David and I had prepared the night before. I've decided to split everything evenly between us, but with clear conditions. Your share will be placed in a fund managed jointly by both of us. All major financial decisions must be made together, and a significant portion must be dedicated to charitable work and repairing the harm you've caused. And if I don't accept, you'll receive a fixed allowance sufficient for a comfortable life, but without access to the main estate. The choice is yours. Rachel didn't hesitate. I accept. I accept all the conditions. She stood and walked to the window. Mom, these past months taught me what I didn't understand before. Money only has value when you know how to use it for good. Otherwise, it's just paper that rots the soul. And the job at the store? I asked. I'll keep it at least for a while. Danielle and the women there are real friends, not the leeches who used to surround me. And I like the feeling of earning my own paycheck, even if it's small. While David prepared the official papers, Rachel and I discussed next steps. But there was one question I had to ask. Rachel, I need you to be completely honest. Are you doing all of this change in attitude because you've truly changed? Or because you now know I control the money? It was the most important question. The one that would decide whether our entire journey had meant something. Rachel thought carefully, then answered, 2 hours ago, when I still believed Uncle Thomas's inheritance depended on your approval, I had already decided. Even if you said no, I'd keep trying to become a better person, not for money, but because I finally like the person I'm becoming. She came over and took my hand. Mom, these months of working, struggling, meeting real people with real problems taught me something 35 years of privilege never could. True wealth comes from the relationships you build and the good you do in the world. Money is just a tool to achieve that. And are you sure you won't go back to who you were before? I asked. I can't promise I'll never make mistakes, she admitted honestly. But I can promise I'll never forget the lessons I've learned these past months. And if one day I start slipping, I hope you'll stop me again. That afternoon, we signed all the necessary papers. Rachel officially became co-owner of an estate now exceeding $500 million, including Uncle Thomas's inheritance and the investments that had grown during the months of crisis. But more important than any number was what we had regained: our mother-daughter relationship and the chance to use our wealth to make a real difference in the world. As we left David's office, Rachel suddenly made a request. Mom, can we go see Charles? I want to apologize to him in person, not just invite him back to work, but give him a chance to expand the garden, even start a training program for other gardeners. As I walked toward the car, I reflected on the miracle I had just witnessed. William had been right all along. Sometimes, to save someone you love, you have to let them hit rock bottom. Let them learn from their own mistakes. Let them discover for themselves the true value of what matters. But there was still one final surprise, something even William hadn't foreseen, and it completely changed how we looked back at everything. 3 months after the reconciliation, while Rachel and I were hosting the very first annual meeting of the Charity Foundation established in William's memory, a letter arrived that shook our understanding. It was from a notary in New York, informing us that William had secretly kept a safety deposit box for years. It could only be opened when 3 conditions were met. Rachel had to earn her own income for at least 3 months. She had to genuinely help someone in need, and the 2 of us had to sign an official reconciliation document together. Dad thought of everything, Rachel whispered as we read the letter. He even had a plan for after we'd learned the lesson. That week, we went to Manhattan. At the bank, the staff led us down into the vault and opened a medium-sized metal box. Inside were some additional financial documents, but the real surprise was a bundle of letters, all written by William during the last 2 years of his life. The letters were dated, numbered, and meant to be read at specific milestones in our family's healing. The first letter was for Rachel, for when she had learned the value of work. My dearest daughter, Rachel read aloud, tears streaming down her cheeks. If you are reading this, it means you've discovered what I always knew was inside you: strength, independence, and compassion. Work is not a punishment, but a gift that connects you to your own abilities and dignity. The second was for me, to Nancy, the bravest woman I know, my eternal love. Thank you for being strong when I could not. Thank you for loving our daughter enough to let her make painful mistakes. I know these past months have been the hardest of your life, but I also know you are the only one who could guide Rachel back to her true heart. But the letter that moved us most was the last, written for the moment when mother and daughter had truly become a family again. My two loves, if you are reading this together, then the miracle I hoped for has happened. Rachel, you've realized that true wealth is not in what you have, but in what you give. Nancy, once again, you've proven that real love sometimes requires the greatest courage. Letting go, so you can find each other again. But there's one more thing you need to know, the letter continued. Something I kept secret even from David until now. For the past 5 years, I've quietly donated tens of millions of dollars to charities across the United States. I didn't do it through the family fund because I wanted it to remain completely anonymous. Rachel and I exchanged stunned looks as I read on. I've paid for college tuition for more than 500 underprivileged students. I've funded 3 hospitals in the rural South and Midwest. I've created grants for single mothers, nutrition programs for children, and shelters for victims of domestic violence. I did it all in silence because I wanted to be sure that when it was your turn to manage the fortune, it would be for the right reasons. The letter revealed that William had given away nearly $100 million in those years, and he had set up mechanisms for the donations to continue automatically after his death, as long as we proved ourselves ready to carry on the legacy. The family's true estate, including planned charitable contributions and future commitments, is $650 million, the letter stated plainly. But it comes with the greatest responsibility you can imagine: to use this wealth to change lives, not just to live comfortably. The letter ended with detailed instructions on continuing the charitable programs, a list of contacts at the organizations he had anonymously supported, and a 20-year roadmap for expanding them. P.S. In the box, you'll also find the deeds to houses in each place we've helped: the South, the Midwest, and 3 major cities in the East. They're not vacation homes, but operational centers to directly oversee the impact of these donations. I want you to meet the families who've been helped, to see with your own eyes how your choices truly change lives. Rachel and I sat in silence for several minutes, overwhelmed by William's quiet generosity and the enormous responsibility now resting on our shoulders. Mom, Rachel finally whispered, do you understand what this means? It means your father wasn't just teaching us about money and character, I replied. He was preparing us to become stewards of a legacy far greater than our family alone. In the weeks that followed, we began contacting the organizations William had quietly supported. Each conversation revealed a deeper layer of his silent generosity. Orphanage directors didn't know how to thank the anonymous angel who had saved their facilities. Mothers were able to feed their children because of the programs he had funded. College graduates who had no idea who paid their tuition were now living the futures they once thought impossible. It's overwhelming, Rachel admitted one evening as we reviewed the impact reports from the donations. Dad helped thousands of people without ever asking for recognition or thanks. We just need to begin one step, one family at a time. We decided to start by visiting the centers William had established. Our first trip was to a small hospital in rural Alabama, where William had funded all the equipment. Watching doctors save lives with machines our money had provided, meeting families who received treatment for free, it completely transformed how we understood what wealth truly meant. This is what Dad wanted us to understand, Rachel said, holding a newborn baby who survived thanks to the incubator we donated. Money isn't a prize to enjoy. It's a tool given to do God's work on earth. A year after the reconciliation, we officially founded the William Anderson Foundation, with Rachel as executive director and me as chair of the board. Rachel had left her job at the clothing store, but kept her friendships with Danielle and the other women she had met there. In fact, some of them now worked for the foundation, using their real-life experience to find and help struggling families. Mom, Do you know what the strangest thing is? Rachel asked at the launch of the 10th scholarship program. What is it? I smiled. I'm happier now working 14-hour days to help others than I ever was when I could buy anything I wanted. Dad was right. True happiness comes from knowing your life has a purpose bigger than yourself. Night. As we reviewed applications for a new microcredit program for single mothers, I thought about the extraordinary journey we had just lived. William had orchestrated not only the saving of his daughter's soul, but the complete transformation of our family into something far greater and more meaningful than ever before. Mom, Rachel said as we approved 50 new loans. Do you think Dad would be proud of us? I looked at my daughter, the same girl who had once been a selfish, cruel heiress, now a woman devoted to changing the world one family at a time. I thought of William, of the intricate plan he had built to save us all, of his faith that love and wisdom could overcome greed and selfishness. I think your father knew exactly what we would become, I answered. And I believe, right now, wherever he is, he's smiling because his plan didn't just succeed, it went far beyond his most optimistic hopes. Outside, the city slept, unaware that in a small room, 2 women worked late into the night, planning to use an entire fortune to change the world. I didn't save her with money. I saved her by teaching her to save herself. And in the process, we discovered that true wealth was never financial assets, but the infinite strength of the human heart to turn pain into compassion, selfishness into generosity. And William, my beloved husband, had known it all along. In the end, the journey of Nancy, Rachel, and William wasn't just about money or inheritance. It was proof that love, patience, and even painful lessons are sometimes the greatest treasures a family can give one another. Because sometimes, to save someone you love, you must be brave enough to let go, so they can walk through the darkness and find the light within themselves. As I watched Rachel transform, I thought about all of our lives. How many times we stumble, how often greed or selfishness leads us astray, but how just one patient hand, one unwavering faith, can bring us back. And what about you? What do you believe is the true measure of wealth? The balance in your account, or the relationships and values you leave behind? Share your thoughts in the comments so we can learn from one another. And if you'd like to continue joining me on journeys filled with emotion like this one, don't forget to follow the channel so you won't miss the next story.